Labour candidate and Starmer ally faces anti-Semitism complaint over controversial remarks on Marxist Jews. We're going to read into this more from Byline Times, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from Byline Times with the headline of a Labour candidate and Starmer ally faces anti-Semitism complaint over controversial remarks on Marxist Jews. Luke Akehurst, if I mispronounced his surname, I apologise, remarks about Marxist Jews spark outrage with critics claiming that they play into good Jew, bad Jew tropes. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share it across social media so others are notified of this video. Now, let's be very, very clear here. Now, this piece was obviously from the 7th of June, as you can clearly see. So it's entirely possible, but by the time this comes out, that he may not be a candidate and he may have already been pushed aside. Possible, but we don't know. I think it's also another thing to remember that there are other Labour candidates who are not staunch Starmer allies and supporters who have been kicked to the curb for far less things than what is being by the remarks that this Labour candidate has been made as well. So if he is not, if they stand by him, then they're kind of setting double standards here of one rule for one candidate and another rule for another candidate, because we know that there was one Labour candidate who was not allowed to stand in, I believe it was in Brighton, and it was because of a post that they made because of a comment that they made back in 2012. And it wasn't even anti-Semitism. It was very, very light thing. But the Labour Party dug really deep on this candidate because they wanted this potential candidate to run in a Brighton seat, I'm pretty sure, because they didn't want that person to run and they wanted to run their own person to run. Well, now you have the opposite effect. So the question is here, are they going to do anything about it? That's the real question, because it doesn't feel right to me that if you're going to push candidates out that have made remarks or said things that they are considered anti-Semitic or wrong in any way, shape or form, then you need to apply it to all, regardless of whether they are a Starmer ally or they are very centre left or far left, whatever their position is. Because otherwise, you'd be made to look like a hypocrite. You really would be made to look like a hypocrite. So what do you guys honestly think? Let's have a little read then, shall we? So, a Labour candidate and director of the lobby group We Believe in Israel faces a complaint of anti-Semitism after footage emerged of him suggesting that Marxist Jews had abandoned very much of their Jewish identity and saw Judaism as purely cultural thing around a bowl of chicken soup. It's very stupid of him to say that. Luke Akehurst, who is not Jewish, sits on the Labour's National Executive Committee. Oh, so he sits on Labour's NEC as well. Interesting. As an ally of Sir Keir Starmer, he made the controversial remarks in talks of Marxism, titled What's Going On in Regard to Israel, Jews and Anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, for the Edgware United Synagogue in 2020. In his speech, he claims that Marxist Jews have abandoned very much of their Jewish identity. They don't go to shul synagogues at all. You know, it's become a purely cultural thing around the occasional bowl of chicken soup or whatever. Why would you say such stupid things? Like, really? They kind of look at all of you who are either more obstinate or even more similar way more involved in the community than they're like. That's deeply frustrating for them. They can't understand why you haven't moved on. They can't understand why you feel this affinity to Israel, for instance. In the talks, he added that Marxist Jews have to force things like the Israel-Palestine conflict into a paradigm that makes it just part of a global history of class struggle. Now he is the subject of a complaint from a Jewish London Labour councillor, Martin Abrams, who told Byline Times, as a Jewish Party Labour member, I believe Luke Akehurst's comments are deeply anti-Semitic and trying to defy anti-Zionist Jews out of Judaism, the good Jew, bad Jew trope. Many Jewish anti-Zionists go to synagogues, some don't. We are all Jews. For a non-Jew to state of our Jewish is solely culturally based on the bowl of a chicken soup is deeply offensive, and I would like to question Luke Akehurst's sustainability as a Labour Party candidate. The Lambeth a Labour councillor and left-wing Momentum activist, added that Keir Starmer has said that he would take a zero-tolerance approach to anti-Semitism, and that he warns that the highest possible quality candidate to be put before the electorate. But we have already seen similar occasions of the Labour Party, like ex-MEP Steve Reid and Barry Shearman, both in Keir Starmer's faction, making allegedly anti-Semitic comments and getting away with a simple apology, Claire Abrams has said. A lack of action against Luke Abrams would show that Keir Starmer clearly isn't taking a zero-tolerance approach to anti-Semitism, and you can't get away with it if you are and you can get away with it if you are a Keir Starmer supporter, he claimed. And this is the thing, like and this is the thing, you want to show you're a broad church, but yet you're not willing to accept an apology from those who are not staunch allies of you. The argument from some within Labour to saying is that they want everyone who's on the same page, but yeah, it's a bit hard to swallow this pill. These double standards ultimately damage the very real fight against anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, and as a Jewish Labour Party member, that is deeply upsetting, he added. Post Michael Rosen, who is Jewish, responding to the re-emergence footage shared on X by joking, "This is really useful. Could Mr. Akehurst set himself up as a gatekeeper we could go to find out if we qualify as being Jewish? Perhaps he could have the checklist that he could go through with us, and then he could decide whether we would have a certificate or not." The left-wing group Jewish Voice for Labour also added, "We don't need any advice from Luke Akehurst about how to be Jews. We could, however, offer him some useful advice about how to be better human beings." Yeah, that could be helpful. Responding to the uproar and an inquiry from Byline Times, Luke said via party spokesperson, said, "I am very proud to have been an ally of the Jewish community my entire political life, and I played a leading role in fighting the scourge of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, both before and since the ECHR report. Yeah, I have been targeted persistently since my election by online hatred from people who are not North Durham electors. The latest manifestation of this is to take completely out of context 15 seconds of a speaker event from 2020 that takes a sync over an hour. The event, I was at a talk I gave to a Jewish audience about fighting anti-Semitism and was hosted by Edgware United Synagogue. I will not let this distract me from fighting for a fairer and more economic deal and better public service for the people of North Durham, with a Labour MP and a Labour government led by Sir Keir Starmer." The Labour Party did not comment directly, but appears to be standing by him as their candidate, as nominations have set to close. In the days before being selected as the Labour candidate last week, Luke Akehurst appeared to delete over 2,000 of his own tweets. One of the tweets appears to show Akehurst claiming that the United Nations was anti-Semitic. Others appeared to show illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank in occupied Syria. Oh, 2,000 tweets. I wonder what some of those tweets said. Why the scramble to clear so many tweets? Unless you got something to hide. In context, are more expensive quotes from Akehurst's lecture. Below, we shared a more extensive transcript from the part of the talk around 55 minutes in to the Edgware United Synagogue in 2020 that is being recirculated. So I could, should I read this whole piece? I could read this whole piece for you guys. So let's read what it says here. So, responding to an audience question, Luke says, "I think you are the doctrinaire Marxist-Leninist. So I'm using this very carefully because I think you could get there if there are Marxists who might be in an okay position. Obviously, if you are a Marxist-Leninist, you believe that imperialism is the highest form of capitalism and it comes just before capitalism collapses. There are empires, Union Jack flyers over them anymore. So you have to try and pin that label on somewhere, and you pin it on Israel, and you say that it's a colonial project. A bunch of Europeans ignore all Jewish connections to the land in Israel and all of the survivors who have been there the whole time anyway, or whatever." This is what he's quoted as saying, by the way. And you talk about it being a kind of European colonial project. It is not clear there whether the conspiracy theory is about that. Is that the colonial powers are telling the Jews to do it, or the Jews are getting the colonial inaudible? That's one way or the other. We're back into conspiracy theories. And there's also this source of sense that if you believe Marxist-Leninists, even as a Marxist, that the history of all helio-existent societies is a history of class struggle, and that's what history is all about. It's not about religions, it's not about tribes, it's not about a great man or woman, it's about the struggle, the economic struggle between class, and then resolve itself in a resolutionary situation and move forward with the next stage of history. Well, if you look at the people whose primary identification is a Jew, whether that's cultural or religious or ethno-religious, and you go, well, they're not supposed to believe that anymore. They're supposed to identify as a proletarian, and so that they get involved in a class struggle until they forget all this Jewish stuff and spending the Tuesday nights at an election session at Edgware United Synagogue. They get down the local community hall and start spending their evenings being politically educated by Graham Bash or someone by Tony Grinston. We're not going to be able to advance history. I think if you're completely right, this is deeply ideologically rooted, and in particular the sort of two guys that I mentioned. I once said to Graham Bash that we're handing out leaflets outside like party conferences. We know each other from Hackney and before all the Coleman stuff actually got on a reasonable well. And I said, so Graham, are you a Buddhist? A senior socialist Jew? Because I keep hearing about Buddhists. As he said, well, I prefer Buddhists to Zionists like you. And he went, actually, I'm not a Buddhist. I'm a Bolshevik. He will literally identify with the Russian Revolution in 1917, the people that the Leninists sent around to smash up the synagogues and chase the rabbits out of towns and persuade everyone to go down the communist hall and talk about communism. And because they have abandoned very much of their Jewish identity, they don't go to shul at all. You know, it's become it's become a purely cultural thing about the occasional bowl of chicken soup or whatever. They look at all of you who are even more observant or even in a secure way more involved in the community than they like. Why haven't? That's deeply frustrating for them. They can't understand why you haven't moved on, why you can't understand why you feel this affiliation to Israel, for instance. It's like an incompassionately theory of how the world works. Like a substance religion, it's like if you are a Marxist-Leninist, you have an out-of-the-box description of how people irrigate with each other and how the economy works, how relationships between countries work, how society works. And then if things superficially look like they don't fit into that, it would destroy your entire world view. So you have to force things like the Israel-Palestine conflict, which actually incredibly complex with huge roots in history and religion and nationalism, all kinds of complexities and in relationships. You try to force it into paradigms that make it just part of a global history of class struggle. Otherwise, their heads explode if they're actually confronted with the reality that the world doesn't fit into the neatly patterns like that. This is apparently what he stated in saying there, according to Byline Times here, the piece there. But I want to state that obviously this is not my expertise when it comes to Marxist Jews and anti-Semitism. In this regard, I'm not an expert on this stuff, you guys. For those who have been watching this, I'm not an expert in any way, shape or form. But obviously they put the line saying merely cultural thing around a bowl of chicken soup. I think that's pretty distasteful comments. I think him not saying that religion doesn't play a factor is complete BS. Religion, without a shadow of a doubt, plays a factor into what is happening in the Middle East. What's happening in a lot of conflicts are started because of religion. A lot of it, there is tribalism also involved in many conflicts as well. But to say religion is not a factor is nonsense. I believe there is always religion playing a factor into this. But I don't think at the time of this recording, I don't expect Luke to lose his seat. I expect he'll probably be told to issue an apology and then that'll be it, move on sort of thing. But just because he's a staunch ally of Keir Starmer. And the deadline is already passed anyway. So, but it is entirely possible that he may not be in his seat as well. But I'm pretty sure that they will just let it slide. But what do you guys honestly think? What do you guys make of this Labour candidate and the remarks that he made? How does it How does it make you feel? If you're a Jewish person yourself, let me know what you honestly think about the remarks and the comments that he has allegedly made as well. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you found this video interesting, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video, and subscribe because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope to catch you all very, very soon.